The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Welcome to your Thursday afternoon and the live presentation of the Starr and D'Amico Show. Good to see so many familiar faces in the aftermath of the Montreal Canadiens, Marco D'Amico, and their first winning streak since late October into early November. Big shout out to everybody spending some of their time to be with us today on this Thursday as the Montreal Canadiens prepare for a couple of matinee affairs Friday and Saturday. And a big shout out to all of our sponsors in the introduction there. And of course, to Chuck and Evie and the family and the incredible staff at Little Bear on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. And you can find them online for the Black Friday month of November with the best brands and the best deals in the pet business at littlebearonline.com with delivery and curbside to pick up. Mr. Marco D'Amico, welcome to Thursday. How's it going, brother?
I'm doing good. How's it going, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving to our American pals that are tuning in. We're talking about Black Friday. There's obviously, I've been talking about them all week. Canuck jackets, 40% off right now. Warm as heck, those jackets. I invite you all to go and check it out on Rachel and in the Plateau in Montreal. Just a really solid just lineup of jackets. You have a cold room you can go to even try them in. It's actually ridiculous. It's like being in a walk-in fridge. I invite you all to go and check them out as well. Canuck jackets.
You know, I'm filled with positivity on this Thursday morning in the aftermath of that 4-3 win where the Canadiens went into the first intermission with a 2-0 lead. Nick Suzuki picks up his 400th career point, joining quite the illustrious list of Mats Naslund and Jacques Lemaire and Steve Shutt. And, of course, Guy Lafleur is the fastest players in Montreal Canadiens history to get to 400 career points. And the Montreal Canadiens, once again, let a little bit of a lead slip through their grip, but pick up the 4-3 win on Ivan Demidov's game winner in a 4-3 final. You know, there are a couple of positives right off the hop. That's exactly, Marco, how you want to start a 3-game road trip. They've got some tough opponents still left in Vegas tomorrow afternoon, and then at Colorado, where the Avalanche have like one loss this season. They've won 10 in a row. They play at Minnesota tomorrow at 3:30, but to me, Zachary Bolduc arriving with his presence on the first line, Suzuki 3 points, Bolduc 3 points, Caulfield for 1 point to round out a very strong 7-point collab for that top unit. Boy, oh boy, did they need that, didn't they?
Yeah, I think the power play needed that, and I think that they needed that at 5-on-5 to get going. I think that, Bolduc was a pet project of the organization. They obviously want him to get going. They did not, trade Logan Mailloux for him simply so he could be kind of like a third line player. But, new team, new systems, started the season off with an injury. Then you run into a couple of games where it's not really working for you. Injuries, changing of teammates. So I like that they felt comfortable enough that you could remove Juraj Slafkovsky from the top line and put a guy like Bolduc to try and get him going while Slafkovsky kind of plays the veteran on the newfound kid line. And now you overnight almost have two successive offensive lines that were pretty productive for the Canadiens last night. You look at Demidov's game-winning goal. There was a whole lot of chaos on that play, but ultimately elite talent bails you out when you need it to. So I liked what I saw, but definitely Bolduc is the one that really caught my eye, and I think that a lot of folks around the Montreal Canadiens were hoping were going to get going, because if he is going, and if he is going to be that kind of impact player that we saw last night on a regular basis, the Canadiens are well set in this kind of dynamic to be able to kind of keep up with the Eastern Conference in the playoff race, whilst they look to maybe improve their roster in a top six capacity.
Yeah, to that point, right? The Ottawa Senators pick up another win. They're 3-1 now on their 7-game road trip. They're going to get Brady Tkachuk back into the lineup tomorrow, by all accounts. The Boston Bruins aren't going away. The Pittsburgh Penguins aren't going away. It's a very congested Eastern Conference race here as we rounded the quarter pole. And one of the other things, in terms of the positivity in the aftermath of that 4-3 win in Utah on Wednesday night was the debut of defenseman Adam Engstrom. And if you'll recall, Marco's with us on TSN 690 every Wednesday for Habs Breakfast. When I asked Marco, I said, for me, I would start Adam Engstrom in Utah on Wednesday. Different than Alex Tessier in the sense that, he plays a Canadian system more or less for Pascal Vincent and the Laval Rocket. I didn't think it would be a steep uphill climb to get him integrated into Martin St. Louis' system right off the hop. But what'd you make of Adam Engstrom's debut and Alex Carrier? Yikes. Not the best night for Alex Carrier on the defensive side of things there. So let's tackle both of those. Let's start with Adam Engstrom and his NHL debut in Utah.
Yeah, just over 10 minutes. I thought that from what we saw, from what we were able to see in his demeanor, the zone exits, it was what I thought would be advertised, just a mobile defenseman capable of getting the puck up the ice, wasn't shy about maintaining offensive zone possession. The biggest thing for me, obviously the lack of minutes was one thing.
Yeah.
But the gap control was there. I did. That was one thing I was just a little worried about, was the physicality, the gap control. I thought that he did pretty well in that regard. Again, it's hard to really play off a system like the way the Canadiens were playing last night, because the Canadiens were trying to play that perfect road game. They were trying to play it safe. And you look at a guy like Engstrom, he's not necessarily the safe-ish kind of guy. So it was kind of unorthodox seeing him play that way, but the fact that he could play that way is a strong showing, because it shows that he can be counted on to make the safer plays, as opposed to trying to be the all offense kind of guy. So I liked what I saw from him. My only issue, and again, I think you pointed it out, was that at 5-on-5, when he was playing with Alex Carrier, he almost felt like it was a ticking time bomb. What was going to be the mistake that was made? How are they going to commit? And that's why I really liked his positioning, the way that he was following guys out, boxing them out, and then ultimately just getting to the inside of the players, being able to poke the puck out and go back the other way. So I liked what I saw from Engstrom, and it's his first game. It's a road game. Your nerves galore. You don't want to make a mistake. It's a tight game. It was bad. You really not an ideal place to start a rookie defenseman in his career. So the least mistakes you make, the better off you are. And that's exactly what he did last night. Now, when it comes to Alex Carrier, that's a completely different story. Alex Carrier has had, I'd say, a rough month in terms of just overall positioning, in terms of some of the decision making. I wasn't very impressed with him on Saturday. Again, last night, not very impressed. Overcommitting on certain goals, bad penalties, bad positioning. It's just like the timing is off. And this is a player that when he was acquired from the Montreal Canadiens last year, the timing was there. He was really good with his active stick. He really kind of balanced out both, the other two defensive pairings that he was eventually on. I think that he's kind of gotten away from that. Now, whether that's an injury or not, that's up to speculation. I can't really comment on that. But what I would say is, there's almost like there's something either from a mental perspective or a physical perspective that's ailing him from being as effective as he once was, because I find him a little bit too, a little too passive. And then consequently, he overcommits to make up for the passivity. And I think that, being even keel and kind of level with his play and calm with his play and choosing his moments, I think that's the better call for him. That's what's made him successful.
As Timothy points out in the chat, he wants to talk about Marty's deployment of certain players, as boy, oh boy, did the coach really shorten that bench. Not only did Nick Suzuki have a Mike Matheson kind of ice time allotment, last night in Utah, playing over 24 minutes. No other Canadians forward got to 19, let alone 20. Suzuki utilized in all situations, but like Jared Davidson got no shift. Florian Jack, I think, got one. Adam Engstrom got two. So it really was not all hands on deck. It was the best players with all hands on deck. And I think the reality also is, it's been well documented. Everybody knows this. We say this regularly. It's the youngest team on average in the National Hockey League, but sometimes it gets lost in the mix. They had 6 rookies. The Canadians dressed 6 rookies yesterday. Yep. So personally, like my take on Timothy's comment about let's talk about deployment of players, I don't take an issue with it. I think it was very situational. I think he handled it well, and they won the game in regulation with a nice third period comeback. How did you read how, Tim's question here about the coach's deployment of players and your reaction to the short bench on Wednesday night?
I think that you coach to win a game. I think that it kind of sucks that, you want to see some of these younger players play and develop and this and that. But when you don't have the last change and you're as deep as Utah is at forward, Jesus, they were playing Peterka on their third line.
Yeah.
You know who's on the Canadiens' third line? Josh Anderson.
Yeah.
Make the comparison, guys. So this is the reason why they shortened their bench. This is the reason why some of these rookies were playing less. This is the reason why you have guys that shouldn't be playing 15 minutes a game that are, because it's a lack of organizational depth, and you're missing basically an entire top 9 line right now with Newhook, Doc, and Laine all injured. So what are you going to do? Well, you can't hope at this stage of the Canadiens rebuild to ice 6 rookies and to use them in the way that they would all get, average NHL ice time. You can't, especially with the way that game was going, the way the momentum was going. The Canadiens didn't want to get caught. That was the big thing. They didn't want to get caught with the matchup game. They did on a couple of goals, and it hurt them for that. And so that's one of the main things, that when you're coaching on the road, ice time is a bigger, I have less issue being critical of ice time on the road than I do of ice time at home. Ice time at home with the last change, you can play with your lines. You can do whatever you need to do. Unless the game becomes a special teams circus, you can do what you need to do. But on the road, it's so difficult, especially when you're trailing going into the third. You're trying to stop the bleeding in the second. You're putting out some of your veterans. That doesn't work out. It's a difficult seat to be in because the team isn't 100% playing with confidence. So you're going to lean on your veterans for that, especially. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they want to overwhelm some of these younger players either. It's a common idea that you want to throw your young kids into the fire and see if you see what they can do and you think they're going to help out. But the opposite effect could also happen, where they get absolutely burned, and that affects their confidence. And then you send them back down to Laval and they never find their mojo again, because unfortunately that's what happened with Owen Beck last year. Everybody wanted to see him in a 2C role. He was there for 10 games, didn't do well, took it to heart, got sent down to Laval, couldn't find his mojo, and now is trying to find his identity there. Do you really want to play that game? And so I understand Martin St. Louis and trying to protect some of these players and put them in positions where maybe the pressure isn't going to be that high. Where I counter and where I understand fans is, with that said, I don't think he necessarily played his best game. Obviously, he has the game-winning goal, but I still feel like there should be more opportunity for a guy like Ivan Demidov to play more up the lineup. The only thing I would say to Martin St. Louis' favor is I really don't think that Ivan Demidov was having the best two-way game last night. Even on the goal that he scored, there were 2 giveaways on the same play prior to him being able to get that puck. So you have to evaluate it from that end, because if that game is lost because of a bad matchup, then everyone's going to blame Martin St. Louis as well. So it's a damn if you do, damned if you don't. And so that's why when I look at it on the road, I always give the coaches the benefit of the doubt. At home, go to town.
Nice to see them bounce back in that third period after getting scored on 3 unanswered. Jakub Dobeš was good when he really needed to be, I should say. And right now, that's the difference. That's the difference in Sam Montembeault's game and Jakub Dobeš's game, especially in the waning moments when the how do you hit a post and it's still icing? I'm not so sure I understand that or understood it, and still don't today. But there was Dobeš with Utah pressing down low, a couple of point blank stops late in that third period to preserve the 1-goal lead. And let me put Blonded Zero's comment on the screen, where Blondie here says the Canadiens need to get a cheap depth forward at this point. A guy like Kevin Haula would make a lot of sense for this organization. And look,
Eric.
I mean, what did I say, Kevin? Sorry.
Yeah.
They talk. Alex Tessier, obviously, acquired, signed to a 1-year deal. Marco and I, a video now is up for members of the channel, $2.99 a month, and you get early access to all our stuff. We're going to talk about the ridiculous asking price for Eric Haula and the potential bidding war. Eric Haula for Ryan O'Reilly. That's up on the channel now. But what type of impact are we talking about here with Alex Tessier? I mean, it's an educated risk with the potential of reward, and I'm even hesitant to use the word risk here because there really isn't too much in my opinion. But is there more to come? Is Alex Tessier the first of what the Canadiens need more depth to Blondie's comment that this is what the team needs with all the injuries they're dealing with?
No. I mean, first of all, and I will add this. I'd be interested to watch the waiver wire today. Sammy Blais is back on waivers. And if the Canadiens are the only team to put in a claim on waivers today, well, then he can be taken immediately and sent to Laval, or he could stay up with the Canadiens for the time being up until he plays either 10 games or is on the roster for 30 days, whichever one comes first.
Yeah.
But before that time, they could send him to Laval as well. So if the Canadiens feel like they need to weather the storm and they want to bring in a vet, and they're the only team that puts in a claim for Sammy Blais, that's an easy guy to go and get. Experienced guy that's good with young players, was excellent with the Abbotsford Canucks on their route to an AHL championship this past spring. He was part of the plans to begin with. So it is what it is. I see a comment, Toronto's going to take Sammy Blais. No, Toronto is the one waiving Sammy Blais.
Correct.
So Montreal, because they don't have priority like some folks think, it's a reverse order of the NHL standings by a points percentage. But the Canadiens, I think, are in the middle of the pack now. I think they're in the late teens. But if they're the only team to put in a claim, they would be able to take Sammy Blais, put him on their roster, or send him to Laval, vice versa, and would be able to call him up or send him down at will. So I think that could be a cheap opportunity for them to go and get a physical forward that has experience, that goes through this, and they will be able to help certain young players. And maybe you send down a Davidson in that point, or, I don't want to get shot, but maybe you send down a Florian Jackai at that point, because you have a veteran piece, or you send him down, yada, yada. But the idea is, if you want bottom six help, it's there. And the thing is, Kirby Doc is due back, like, the beginning of January?
Yeah.
So 4 to 6 weeks was the call, was it not?
Correct.
Yeah. So late December, or mid to late December, and if not January. So do you really want to make a trade? Do you have to give up assets to improve your bottom six when there's the player, like, can you weather the storm for 4 more weeks, 5 more weeks at most? I think they can. I think that they've shown that they can. And if not, you have the waiver wire for that. And I think that is what it is. I see comments of Kiefer Sherwood as an opportunity for someone to go and get. I like Kiefer Sherwood, but Kiefer Sherwood is a trap. Kiefer Sherwood, to me, is a trap, is the kind of player that teams panic to go and get because it's the physical, even though he's not the biggest. I think he's like 6 foot, 196, but because he's physical and he's having a really good year, but it also happens to be a contract year. To me, that's a trap kind of player, because then when everybody is healthy and raring to go, where does Sherwood fit?
Exactly.
Right. And so and then you got to extend him. And so where does he fit in the long-term vision of what you're doing with this team? And what's it going to cost? Because it's at least a second round pick. the way he's playing right now for Vancouver and the amount of teams that are going to be injured. But again, it goes back to the idea. It goes back to the concept of depth. Depth isn't going away. In fact, I don't think it can get any worse. And I say this by knocking on wood, but it could.
Yeah.
So they're going to get players back. I'm not necessarily worried about that. I think that that's fine. Where the Canadiens are looking at right now is the top six. The Canadiens are looking to see who could potentially become available in the top six. Yes, they've shown interest in Ryan O'Reilly. We're going to go into detail on that tomorrow.
Yes.
But what I could tell you is they would rather keep those second round picks and those assets for a bigger trade than give them away for middle six talent that will get further pushed down the lineup and may actually not even stick around if they don't want to re-sign in Montreal. So always got to be careful with that. I like Kiefer as a player. I really do, but I don't think this is the time to start throwing, top draft picks, for third or fourth liners having career years. That's the kind of trap that the Canadiens used to get other teams on, right? Getting a first round pick plus for Ben Sherratt, getting a first round pick for an albeit, really good, but often injured Sean Monahan twice, so that's why I'm not spilling no beans. That's why when you look at the idea of them making a move, the Canadiens are looking bigger. The depth idea, they're not necessarily willing to spend assets. That's why they went after a free Alex Texier, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised if they look at the waiver wire to add maybe a little bit of physicality and take back someone like Sammy Blais.
Yeah, we'll see. As you'll see tomorrow, I mean, it's up on the channel now for members of the channel as we dissect the Ryan O'Reilly possibilities after Pierre LeBrun's reporting earlier this week about a first-round pick and an A-grade prospect. And listen, I have my point of view. I'll express it. I'll tease it now. I like Ryan O'Reilly. I know his shooting percentage is what it is, but he's like at 13%, so it's not a massive drop-off for his career with where he's at now. He's on pace for almost 60 points and has 7 goals on a team that right now, by all accounts, has a very toxic environment. And for me, he fits the mold of what the Canadiens are kind of lacking, but not at any price. Nice to see the power play get back to functionality yesterday, scoring twice with the man advantage. Did you notice a change? Did you notice something different in the structure that allowed them to look a lot more dangerous that resulted in a couple of goals?
They got shots on net.
Yeah, man, dude, on that topic, Lane Hudson, I don't know what happened, what was said. This guy is in like take charge mode, bro.
I feel
so
terrible
impressive.
because I think it goes back to the conversations we were having with him, even as early as the beginning of last week, where we were like, you should trust your shot a little bit more often. Yeah. And it's almost like the Michael Jordan meme where he's just like, and I took that personally.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. Now,
yeah.
What did he have? Like 8 shooting attempts last night? Like
I saw 5, but yeah, I mean, he's in take charge mode.
Shots, yes, but shooting attempts.
Yeah,
he got a couple blocked, missed the net. I think he was at 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But he was 2
blocks, 1 miss, 2 on target. So yeah, 5.
5. Wow. I could have sworn well, they don't always count the ones that are like
it's not it's what's on the box score. Yeah.
The box score in Utah is something else.
How dare you accuse their integrity?
So I mean, listen, it depends on the rink, man. When you look at him and the way that dynamic has shifted now that he's shooting more.
Yeah.
You look at the goals that were scored, right? Baldzuk with a really strong one-timer.
Yeah.
You gotta give him credit. Those usually sailed wide. He started to get more and more pucks on net. That's really good. But then you look at Suzuki's goal on the power play. And it was a broken up play. Baldzuk got a shot on net, rebound straight to Suzuki. Suzuki scores. That's the second time that almost exact play happens between Baldzuk, insert player, and Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki scored a similar goal against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday, and it's not by chance. Getting the pucks on the net creates chaos. It creates instability. Defensemen have to readjust. There's always that split second where if you're an attacking forward, you don't have to readjust. You're going to the net or you're going to a loose puck. And that is the kind of thing that I felt the Canadiens' power play was missing because It was two perimeter. They were looking for the prettiest play. Like, this problem is still systemic on the Canadiens 5-on-3, for example. That to me is a bigger issue than power play in general, is their 5-on-3 strategy. But when it comes to 5-on-4, I think they've got it locked down now, where they've realized we got to get as many pucks towards the net. And with the way that the Canadiens have been shooting on net lately, like, it hasn't been very high in terms of shot traffic for them. And you when you have the opportunity on a power play, you absolutely have to take it. You have to get as many pucks towards the net. And yes, there is opportunity for the pretty play, but when you have a guy like Zach Bolduc on your first power play wave, playing in that bumper, roving up and down towards the bumper and the point, you really want to give him and Juraj Slafkovsky the opportunity to go to work on that first wave. And I just felt like, you looked at last night, even Slafkovsky's disallowed goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where was he? Right by the goal line next to the net.
Exactly.
And so that's what I want to see more of. And I think that to me shows that they've reached another level in their understanding of what they need to do on the power play. And I think I like that you pointed out that this starts with Lane Hutson, and I think it trickles down through the rest of the wave.
Well, I also think, with some of the comments and questions about depth and looking at the waiver wire, as you alluded to earlier, like, some of the answers isn't always right. It's not always a trade. It's not always a pickup. It's not always congesting your organization with bodies and giving yourself all these options. Sometimes you have to look into, your own players. And to me, maybe the most silver of silver linings from that game yesterday was Zachary Bolduc, who had 1 point in the month of November, hadn't scored a goal since October, getting production on that top line. To me, that's also part of the answer. Is it not about, how can this team deal with injuries? How can they be more dynamic? How can they be more threatening, opportunistic? Well, you can look at some of these players, and I think, Zach Bolduc, who scored 13 of his, 19 goals there towards the tail end of the stretch, or whatever the number was for St. Louis last year. It was very opportunistic, but this is the type of performance you want to believe that he can. There's the confidence. I think the kid was lacking some confidence going through this offensive drought, and the answer can come from within, and it could come from Zachary Bolduc, who the Canadiens are desperately going to need to look a little bit more like that, Marco, as December comes with a mighty roar.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get a guy going, you're definitely going to want to play him with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. And I think Nick Suzuki is looking healthier after that block shot a month ago. So I think that bodes well. I think the one thing I really enjoyed, Nick Suzuki's goal, I believe it was Nick Suzuki's goal, where Bolduc starts to play in the defensive zone, and he's the one that charges up the center of the ice with the puck. Right. And I think then Gallagher takes the shot, and he takes the shot, and then it gets to Nick Suzuki, and Nick Suzuki scores it. But he's going back to basics, and that's what I liked. I didn't think he had a perfect defensive game. I thought that there was a lot of, how do you say that? I think there was a lot of turnovers defensively. I think ultimately he sometimes tries to force the play. But what I appreciated from him is his work at the center of the ice. He's not listed as a center, but sometimes old habits die hard. And I do appreciate that, because wingers that appreciate what a center can do often help the center when it comes to transition, when it comes to defensive coverage, when it comes to neutral zone strategy. And I think that he did that really well. What I'd go further to say is Zachary Bolduc that is physically engaged and taking shots on net is a dangerous Zachary Bolduc. And I think that to me is the biggest differentiator of his success, is how is he going to get involved in the game? Because if he's involved in the game, he's like a wrecking ball out there. He's just doing all kinds of things. And I felt like his board battles were stronger. I felt like he was first on pucks as opposed to being the trailer on those pucks. And by being first on pucks, he's assisting them in their cycle game. I found that he was more efficient being able to cover for a defenseman. The defenseman would be able to go in deeper in the zone. I'm talking about a guy like Mike Matheson, Lane Hutson. He would come back to the point a little bit. I liked those base instincts. That's what I'm looking for. When I want to see habits, that's the kind of habit I'd be looking for. And I think if you want a player like him to get unblocked and to gain confidence, the more he's able to start ripping shots, the more he's able to use the weapons that he has always had, the more likely you are to get success, the more likely you are to get him going. Just put him in the right environment. I'm still not a huge fan of the first power play wave setup, but seeing him on the top line playing with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, I think he's slowly starting to find his niche and his identity with the team, and that can only be a good thing.
So the Canadiens are off to Vegas tomorrow afternoon at 3. They play at Colorado Saturday afternoon at 4:00. If it were up to me, I don't think I'm looking at a lineup change for Friday. I think I go back to Jakub Dobeš. I keep Adam Engstrom in the lineup at the expense of Fleury and Jack. I ask Jaden Struble to be better. I ask Alex Carrier to be better. And I keep going with Jakub Dobeš on Friday, understanding that you're back in Colorado on Saturday. And listen, maybe my read is wrong on this, but I don't think Martin St. Louis or even Sam Montembeault, whose confidence is, I'll put it kindly, shaky, I don't think I don't think they're quaking in their boots at the mighty Colorado Avalanche. I think these are pro athletes physically, pro athletes mentally. They're ready for the challenge. Anything from last night that you would think, or you have a differing point of view on what Marty's lineup card would look like tomorrow afternoon in Vegas?
Well, I didn't think that they were going to mess with a winning formula last night, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them try to give maybe Jackeye a game, take Struble out. I personally thought that the Canadiens' least efficient defenseman last night was Alex Carrier. I just felt like, he's a guy that's just been absolutely overwhelmed of late. And so you can't take him out based on the way that Martin St. Louis was using his lines, his defenseman last night. You looked at, Carrier was the third most used defenseman ahead of Lane Hudson, who was also getting penalty kill minutes last night. To me, you read into the lines. I think we may see Tessier in for Davidson. I think we may see Arbor come back in for Engstrom, but I don't think you'll see any other lineup changes out of that. So I'm not expecting much in terms of changes. I think you see Montembeault, and they give Dobeš the challenge of playing against Colorado again, like they did last year when he started.
Yeah,
and I think Engstrom gets one more game, one of the two games, to see exactly what he can do, and then Arbor will draw back in to rotate. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, interesting. Like I said, I'd go with Dobeš. I'm a big momentum guy. I'm a big compete guy. I think right now Dobeš, and to me that's the difference. Like in that third period, it's a hypothetical clearly, but the difference is so small. But it's that timely stop that Dobeš has made that just makes me want to go back to him tomorrow afternoon. But we'll wait and see. Jared Davidson didn't see the ice in the third period, didn't even get to 6 minutes on a night where the Canadiens were lacking for shots, but they win the game 4-3 nevertheless. Yep. But it looks like maybe after this road trip, it looks like maybe his time might be running out. Looks like it might be a reassignment back to the Laval Rocket if I had to read the future with Alex Tessier going to make his debut at some point, whether it's tomorrow or Saturday. But on that note, Florian Jackeye to me is playing some good hockey, playing some smart hockey, playing smart situational hockey. What about Jared Davids here? Do you get the sense that maybe the experiment and his trial at the NHL level might be running out of racetrack here?
For now,
it's
possible. I mean, you don't go and get a Tessier. We were talking about depth here. Like the Canadiens would prefer to have all these guys playing in Laval. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. They would prefer to have all these guys playing in Laval, top minutes on a winning team in Laval right now. That's really going through a good spell of games of late. So I think they definitely would prefer that. That being said, injuries are injuries, and you have to deal with them. So if they get a healthy body, or if they sign a new player, well, then that affords them opportunity. That affords them the ability to turn around and say, hey, I think you're close, or, maybe you need to go and work on this. You need to go and work on that. And then you're able to slot in a guy like Tessier, for example, who probably would have more rope from the coach and allow him to roll 3 lines instead of 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that kind of helps as well, right? And I think the way that the way that the Canadians lines are set up, I don't think Davidson is currently in a role right now to necessarily help him because it's what is it, Gallagher, Veleno, and Davidson is a fourth line. I think if you put an Alex Tessier there, you know, that line will be more apt to be utilized on a regular basis, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not overtaxing the top line by having them double shift in terms of, you know, away zone coverage. And I think when you're playing on a matchup basis where you don't have the last change, it's a minute change, but
Yeah.
it's a different, it changes the idea for a head coach. It changes the strategy. And when you lack depth, like quality depth in your middle six, like the Canadians do right now, it leads them to have to make these kind of decisions. So I think you could always kind of get a sense of what's to come by looking at the coach's decisions in situations of, I wouldn't say crisis, but in crunch situations.
Yep.
This was it. I don't think I don't know that Engstrom would come out of the lineup necessarily, but I think that Jared Davidson is a prime candidate to swap out for Alex Tessier at this point.
You know, and that's the thing too. I like that you talk about, you know, Adam Engstrom who subbed in for Florian Jacki. I mean, part of my read would be if they pull Jaden Struble out, I think we'll get a sense of maybe the Canadians, you know, auditioning for the future, figuring out who that bottom pair defenseman is going to be. Because if Florian Jacki hypothetically sits out a second straight game, I might choose
Harbor.
to read into what the organization really thinks about him versus against Jaden Struble. Whereas opposed to if Struble comes out, Jacki comes back in, then I can see, maybe there's a little inner competition amongst, you know, sixth, seventh defenseman on the Canadians. That would be my read if that were to happen against Vegas tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Canadians can go many ways. They can keep Engstrom in the lineup and not make any changes. Carrier
Yeah.
can come out if he's banged up. Struble can come out if they feel like they want to rotate the younger guys in and out. I think the biggest the biggest differentiator here is based on whether or not all these guys are healthy,
Yeah.
which we're not going to find out at this stage. One thing I do want to see, because there are tons of people asking this question in the chat room, showcasing Engstrom, how many teams are interested in
Yeah. Yeah.
Engstrom.
We did a whole
Look,
video on that.
yeah,
Got
I'll
like
reiterate it.
13,000 views, you know? Like
Yeah,
it's
I'll
there.
reiterate it. I'll reiterate it. If you guys want a little bit more information on that, you can go and check out the video, of course, on the channel. But
Yeah.
I'll go into a little bit more detail. Yeah, there's a handful of teams that, you know, when they talk to the Montreal Canadiens, have a lot of interest in a guy like Adam Engstrom, and you can't really blame him. This is a guy that can play the left side and the right side with ease. You know, and it is a super mobile defenseman and an intelligent player that has only gotten better. Every obstacle, every mission that he's given, he's only ever gotten better and better. So he's turned some heads big time. And so, yeah, there's a handful of teams that are interested in him, but the Montreal Canadiens are also very interested in seeing what his level is, because it also allows them to see what he can do so that they themselves could make better decisions for the future, right? Because you have Mike
Y-
Matheson's contract coming up. You have an excess of defense. You have young defensemen. You have Dobson and Hudson signed long term. Still trying to figure out if Goalie is part of long term plans or not. If he is, you're
Yeah.
starting to run out of space here. Canadians have decisions to make. There's waivers involved. So you best believe the Canadians, if they have an opportunity to come in, bring in a guy like Engstrom and see what he can do, it's a two birds, one stone element where other teams will be able to see what he can do and the Canadians can see what he can do. And if they believe you me, if the Canadians are impressed to the point where they think that this is a guy that could be part of the defense core for years and years to come, and I'm not talking about as a sixth defenseman, you know, then that may push them to make other moves in consequence, not move Engstrom.
Um, this comment from our viewer today, Joe Veleno seems to do better on faceoffs when he takes more of them. Listen, I think it's a good point to bring up because you saw Joe Veleno in the waning moments of that game when the Canadians were hanging on to a 1-goal lead. He was out there with the rest of his teammates trying to defend and protect that 1-goal lead on a night when the faceoff stats were 50-50 down the middle. This guy won over 63% of his draws in the faceoff circle. You know what? I'm not like everybody else. I mean, he's a little bit of a whipping boy lately, especially before he got his first goal there. Wondering about his role. You know, what's the point of Joe Veleno? Is there somebody in Laval that could do his job better?
So mean.
I mean, listen, clearly Martin St. Louis sees it differently. When we talk about, the shortening of the bench and the fact that Marty St. Louis likes the details that Joe Veleno can occupy here. I mean, that to me is very clear.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the fact that he's the only left shot center also kind of has an impact there as well, right? Because Kapanen, Suzuki, and Jake Evans are all right shots. So for sure, when you have a guy, you can choose the side of the face-off, right? You're going to go and put him in on his strong side. But yeah, definitely MSL sees differently. But the thing is, and I stress this, who else is going to take those draws that's a left shot center?
Right.
Organizationally speaking, from top to bottom, who's going to take those draws? Alex Newhook was the only other answer. Zachary Bolduc was tried, didn't work out when he was taking left shot draws when he was playing with Kirby Dach, So they have no choice with the way that their depth is. That's why ideally, if they can go and get a top 6 left shot forward, more likely a center, yeah, that would definitely be like checking off all the boxes. But you're not, unlike the fact that it's Black Friday tomorrow, it's not Black Friday in the NHL just yet. The trade market isn't what it is. So they have to use what they have internally. And right now he is the only left shot center on an NHL contract outside of one Florian Jacki. And Florian Jacki has been moved to the wing because they don't want to put that kind of pressure on him right off the bat. And they feel like in his first couple of games, especially on the road, would put him in a position to be exposed. So do the Canadiens have to live with some of the defensive blunders from Joe Veleno? Yes. Yes, they do, because right now they don't have any available. And they're not going to overpay for guys that are over the hump and whose asking price is very high simply to just plug a hole, right? So this is what you have for now, and the rest of the team compensates by trying to surround him offensively or put players ahead of him that are going to be able to take the heavier of the draws at forward.
Chris, who's obviously a big fan of the numbers 3 and 8, has a question for us here. What's it going to take for the coach to officially consider Dobeš as his number 1 goaltender?
Well, dude, I'll give you a flip side.
If you look at the box score, Dobeš has been the goaltender of record in 4 straight games and in 5 of the last 6. Like, they need both guys in December all day, every day. But Dobeš, to me, I don't think the team's ever going to come out and say it, but Dobeš is the number 1 goaltender right now.
Yeah, no, sorry. I saw a weird comment of, is Marco a doctor? I have no idea what the heck that's about.
Are you a literary or a medicine doctor?
No, but some weird comments from time to time.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't think that there is going to be a determined number 1. I really don't. I think they're just going to go with the hot hand. They're going to go with whoever's getting them wins. And in this season, the way things are going right now, the Canadiens have no choice with it's now 15. They have 15 games coming up in the next 24 days.
Oh, it's wild, man. Yeah.
26 days. There it is. So you have no number 1. You have a goalie tandem, and you're going to be running it because you're going to have back-to-backs coming up the wazoo. And I think when you are trying to get certain guys going, be it goalies, be it young players, whatever, you try to put them in good situations. Canadiens don't have good situations. They're going to go with the hot hand when available, and when it's back-to-backs, the goalies are going to split it. It's as simple as that. So if Dobeš is the one doing that in that moment, then it's him. But you're not anointing anyone. This isn't England. He's not going to get knighted by MSL as the number 1. It's just who is giving him the best in that moment. That's the player. That's the goalie that's going to play at this point.
What did you think of Dobeš's game yesterday?
Tale of 2 tapes.
He went down so early, eh? Like this insecurity, like dropping
to the knees early. Yeah, dropping to the knees early, overcommitting on certain things. It's fun to watch him go because he's an exciting athletic goalie, and sometimes he makes these fun saves.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it's like the 3rd goal against Utah where he's like all over the place, sprawled out, as opposed to trying to be in his position as he should be. But I think you have no choice but to look at him and say, calm it down, bring it down 2 notches. You don't have to play on adrenaline. And I think that's the learning curve that young goaltenders have in the NHL, is learning how to not play on adrenaline. I remember some of Carey Price's first, set of games. Man, he was ever playing on adrenaline. Like, this guy was doing like end-to-end saves.
Mm-hmm.
But if he missed a shot, he wound up like the beginning of the circles. So it's all about being able to structure that. And Carey Price is someone who had excellent structure throughout his career. So just to show you the impact that a player like Carey Price could have, even the adrenaline in his performances as a rookie forced him to do some pretty funny things. So it's the same thing with Jakub Dobeš. I think it's just a question of gaining an experience, continuing to work on his technique with the Rémo, and we see where we go from there. But to me, I think it's going to be up and down performances. I don't expect anything more from a rookie.
Well, no, the Dobeš story is a fascinating one. He doesn't have a ton of reps playing in pressure-packed games, like not part of his national team, getting more reps in these very, very pressure-packed environments. And he got a taste of it in the playoffs, I know, last year with Washington. And even his pregame rituals, right? Where, especially if he gets starts on the road, he's very much a homebody. Like, he orders room service, stays in his room, does a lot of stretching, kind of works on his mental strength to get himself in the right spot, like a real creature of habit before games. And then I think, when you're as young as he is, and then he comes out there on a game where he's starting, I think just the pro athlete in him comes out, and you see how high energy he is, how competitive he can be when you talk about the body language going from here to there. And I know it might be a cop-out answer, but I only think the solution is just more reps. Just get more reps in these environments and just keep getting out there and facing pucks and dealing with adversity. And as the games and the season go by, I think, it's only natural to think that, okay, we'll see a guy who's a little bit more secure in his positioning. But right now, I don't disagree. Yeah, they need, as poorly as Montembeault has played, Marco, like, they need him. They're going to need him if they're going to survive and stay in the parity that is the Eastern Conference before they, trying to avoid slipping down to the bottom of this division, this conference. It's undeniable. You can't. They need both guys.
You look at the Canadiens. The Canadiens have some of the lowest expected goals against metrics in the league.
Yeah.
So
yes,
they should be winning more games of late than they've lost. So it has undeniable how the sub goal, the level of goaltending being suboptimal has impacted them. It's undeniable. And even a game like yesterday, I still found that optimal
they're still
goaltending,
second to worst in save percentage in the NHL. My gosh.
And I still find that even high danger save percentage, it almost goes worse. And where I would say this is good adversity for them to go through now, but I understand the Canadiens keeping an ear open to potential goaltending availabilities. What I would say, though, when it comes to Dobeš, is that he didn't necessarily start off strong with the Ohio State Buckeyes. He didn't start off strong with the Laval Rocket either. Went through adversity after initial success, and then rose and became, a top goaltender in each of those leagues.
Agreed.
So I'm willing to give him time to be able to find his game, to be able to find his center. That's why I keep saying I fully expect these kinds of performances from rookies being asked to play more than they should. In Jakub Dobeš's case, Samuel Montembeault was playing like he was the last 3 seasons. We wouldn't be having this conversation. It would be it would be really good backup, and that's it. And so because you're kind of asking more of Dobeš, I have way more leash for a player like him than I do someone like Sam Montembeault, who was anointed as the number 1 goaltender of this team. So as this player plays tougher matchups, we talk about, ruining his confidence. At this point, man, it's the NHL.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a man's league.
Level up. Level up, right? Like,
yes, correct.
Or because eventually, if you've proved yourself if either he or Sam Montembeault prove themselves to not be stable enough, the Canadiens are going to make decisions, and I hope that decision is not rushing Jacob Fowler to the field, but they may look at an actual legitimate stopgap at goaltending if things don't fix themselves. Though, and I will state this, they're confident that at least one of their goalies is going to figure it out.
Yeah. And I don't know the answer. I'm not, part of the team and their inner workings and stuff. I have no idea how Martin St. Louis and Trevor Letowski and Eric Raymond and the goalies project the next two games and who's going to start. I think, my own opinion, like I said earlier, I'm a momentum guy. I think Dobeš gives me a better chance to win. And if I look at Vegas, that loss yesterday, they've lost 3 in a row. I think I'm trying to play the percentages, and I'm trying to give my team a chance to stockpile some points. Whereas, do they look at it and say, okay, maybe I need my air quote better goaltender against the better team, and that's Colorado? So does that motivate them to start Montembeault against Vegas on Friday because Colorado is the better team and they want their better team collectively Saturday afternoon? Or do they want to do the momentum ride and say, listen, Vegas is vulnerable. Maybe we can get them. Maybe we can hand them a 4 straight loss. And the way to do that is with Jakub Dobeš on Friday afternoon. Like, I have no idea which way they're going to go. I think as I just did, I can make a case for both scenarios.
I think that there's a couple of ways that you can go with it. I think goaltending, listen, it's either A or B at this point, but both goalies are going to play this weekend. So to me, giving Dobeš Vegas and then giving a cold Montembeault that basically hasn't played since getting pulled on Thursday, I think that would be a mistake. My 2 cents. I don't think that I'd be worried about Dobeš's experience and or level of confidence. The Canadiens had no problem throwing this man to the wolves in his first couple of games in the NHL, like Florida Panthers, Colorado Avalanche, Dallas Stars.
Yeah, win.
They didn't care. It was just win. So I have no problem as long as the team plays well in front of him. And I felt like in the second period, that team did him no favors. Yes, there were 3 goals on 12 or 13 shots at that point, but it's where those shots came from. It's how those shots to me, that's the problem. That's the biggest issue is how these shots are coming in. Because the Canadiens allowed, 12 shots or 13 shots through the halfway point of the second period, but a lot of them were high danger chances. Whereas the game may have finished with 30 plus shots for the Mammoth, but a lot of the excess after they had scored their goals came from the outside, right? Long ranging shots that he capped with his glove, point shots that were low that he was able to push away with his pad. Like, they weren't high danger chances. So if the Canadiens can play, I would say, a more structured defensive game and stay out of the box, of course, then the chances are going to be high that Dobeš is going to be able to find his footing and get going. And the more rubber that Dobeš sees, the better he tends to play anyway. So I don't mind playing him against Vegas. Like, I don't mind playing him against Colorado. I think from a goaltending perspective, you're no longer at the point where you need to protect these guys. Now it's time for them to show that they belong in the NHL.
I've seen this pop up, here and there, as Surf X11, maybe make a run at UPL from the Sabres, talk about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I have a friend who's closely connected to the Sabres, and the threshold for patience for UPL and Buffalo is not high. And I think the last thing the Canadiens need is another below 900 save percentage guy. And personally, Marco, we'll talk about trades here. I think they would look at Kakko in Laval before they would potentially make a trade and bring someone from the exterior to help shore up the goaltending position. Right? Look at Laval and get the veteran up here before making a deal to bring someone else.
Well, I think the biggest thing to keep in consideration is not even his play. He signed a $4.75 million until the end of 2029. I think that's the thing that not even like his performances. I'm sure he'll perform better in Montreal than he would in Buffalo. Buffalo's defensive structure, not exactly what I would call ideal. So I don't necessarily mind the Canadiens trying to see what they have internally and trying to see where things go. There's Edmonton that's potentially looking at Tristan Jarry. I don't know how that helps them over Skinner at this point, but it is what it is. I don't think you're going to find a goalie on the market right now. Yeah, well, so the comment is any goalie that comes available, Edmonton is going to pounce on. With what assets?
Yeah. Well, there's so much. The Skinner for Binnington, that continues to get a lot of chatter going.
Yeah, well, I mean, it may be just straight up trades with the additions of this or that.
That's
But if
right.
I'm Edmonton, why would I trade Skinner? If you're Edmonton, you want Skinner and the goalie you're acquiring so you can run a tandem for the rest of the season. And then if one goalie decides to S the bed during the playoffs, well, you have someone else that can come in, just like it happened in Pittsburgh when Matt Murray came in relief of Marc-Andre Fleury.
You don't believe in Cal Pickard? You don't believe in a Binnington Cal Pickard situation in Edmonton?
No. Sorry. I think they need a little bit more love. So that's why I think UPL, I could see why the Canadiens will look into it just to see if he's a player that they would be willing to sell low on.
Yeah.
But it's the amount of time that he signed for. Like, I'm not in favor of rushing Jacob Fowler, but do I think that Jacob Fowler is playing regular games in the NHL by the end of this contract?
Yeah.
Yes. You know, his contract kicked in last year. He's got this year. He's got next year. He's got 2 years from now. He's got 3 years from now. I have Jacob Fowler as the Canadiens' number one before the end of this contract. So then this becomes a problematic contract.
Yeah.
So I don't see UPL. I really, really don't. I think, like I said, the Canadiens are looking primarily top six help. Top six help. I don't think they're at the stage yet where they're pressing the red button on their goaltending.
No.
I think they're going to keep trying them. I think they're going to see where things go. And if the market opens up closer to the NHL trade freeze on December 20th, that's when they'll look into maybe improving that position. But it's not something that I would deem imminent.
And we're still waiting. You know, as we pointed out a couple of times, if you're joining us late, there's a video up now on the channel that's exclusive for members of the channel first. It'll be released tomorrow morning for everybody else to digest. As we cover the reporting around the alleged asking price for Ryan O'Reilly out of Nashville, and Marco and I provide our points of view, and I mean, it's a steep ask, and I'll leave it at that. But I mean, is there any indication, you know, that not so much exclusive to the Canadiens, but we're getting closer to, you know, Vancouver, St. Louis, Calgary, Nashville? We're getting closer to these teams on the lower rungs of their respective conferences, starting to seriously have negotiations and conversations and waiting for the first trade domino to fall before we get maybe a little bit more activity. How close are we today on this November 27th?
I think Nashville wants to move as soon as possible.
Yeah.
St. Louis is looking to make a more of a hockey trade, from what I'm being told, than anything else. Those are the two I've heard the most. The Vancouver Canucks would probably like to get ahead of trading some of their veteran, soon-to-be unrestricted free agent players first. So I could see them trying to do that earlier. And the Calgary Flames, from what I'm being told, yes, they came to a 2-year agreement on the extension of Craig Conroy, a really important thing to do with your general manager if you're planning on changing a certain direction of the team. But they still haven't gotten the okay from management, from ownership, to be able to make trades. And I think that really hurts them, because you have to be an absolute alien to look at the Calgary Flames and think that core is going to win a cup. They could draft Gavin McKenna, and they would still be far away from getting a cup, just because by the time McKenna reaches his stride, a lot of those guys are going to be pushing the end of their careers, and you should have capitalized on their value now, because then if you do draft high in this draft and subsequent drafts, at least you have other assets that you can use to better surround those players, as opposed to those players just retiring. You know, it almost feels like the Montreal Canadiens in 2021. Yes, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, but it almost felt like the core just like Thanos from that moment, and they had to get rid of a lot of guys, and some guys left, and some guys had to get traded out, and their young core that they thought was going to be able to grow with their existing old core. Well, the young core is basically like, well, here are the keys to the team, and we're going to rebuild around you now. Well, if you don't want it to be too late, getting ahead of it is probably better for the long term of the franchise, especially with a new arena coming into Calgary in 2027.
Marco, do you think Habs goalie prospect pool behind Jacob Fowler is strong enough to facilitate a trade?
Behind Fowler, like what, trading like a Volokin or Radkov, a Quentin Miller type player? Because if so, yes, I would say so. You have Dobish and Fowler that are playing in the pros. I think that that's good enough depth to begin with, and you can always add on the waiver wire if you need be, or sign some of these guys. I think they got a couple of guys with pro level potential. I personally do like Radkov. I don't think anyone's suggesting to trade Fowler. They're saying behind Fowler. So I don't necessarily think Fowler is in any way, shape, or form a trade option with the way that he has played. I've never thought I'd say this, but I think he's probably the least likely of the Canadiens' top prospects to move in a deal, just given how unstable the goaltending has been at the NHL level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did not believe that at the beginning of this season.
No. Listen, you're not going to be, again, we talk about, who are the A-grade prospects right now within the Montreal Canadiens infrastructure. We'll get into that. You can have a look on the channel right now as we talked about the Ryan O'Reilly and what's going on with Nashville and everything else. And by no stretch of the imagination are we even getting there. So the Montreal Canadiens get back at it tomorrow afternoon. Be curious to see what Martin St. Louis' lineup card looks like. For the record, I would go back to Jakub Dobish in Vegas tomorrow. The Knights have lost 3 in a row. We'll see if the Montreal Canadiens can build their first 3-game winning streak since late October here, as they've won back-to-back and staying very, very, very much, Marco, into the mix. Final thoughts on last night's 4-3 win?
Yeah, I don't think that any trade is imminent. I see a lot of the proposals in the chat there. I don't think the Canadiens are in the business of trading goaltenders right now. Maybe trading for, but not trading away. But I don't think that's happening right now. I think the Canadiens are in information taking mode, where they're trying out all these young players. They want to see what they have in them because they got to make decisions on their roster soon. They feel, from what I've been told, that bigger players will become available, as we get further into this season, and they want to be able and ready to be able to take advantage of that. Because they felt like they missed out on Dylan Cousins last year, and that's the kind of trade they want to be able to tackle and be able to be like, hey, you don't want futures, you want a player that can jump into your lineup right now. Well, look, this guy played well for us this year, and he's a super young player, and maybe he'll fit well with your core. That's the kind of conversation they want to have. And so by having all the information that they need from their young players to see what they could do at the NHL level, they'll then be better prepared and be well positioned to make an educated decision on which assets they're willing to move for some of these top pieces as they become available.
Good stuff. Happy Thanksgiving to our American friends. Football activity pretty much underway now. The first game with the Packers at the Lions. The one pick I disagree here. I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to win this game outright. I really do. Quinnen Williams has been such a great addition for the Dallas Cowboys. No one's running on them. No one's scoring on them. I think Dak Prescott is out quarterbacking Patrick Mahomes currently. I got the Cowboys winning this game, but I don't have a dollar on it, so I hope you win. I hope your Kansas City -2.5 holds up. Enjoy. And again, just on Marco's comment, like, I'm just of the point of view, the Canadiens don't need to be the market setters. They don't need to be the market. Let someone else go overpay. Let someone else go overreact.
There are more desperate teams in the NHL than the Montreal Canadiens. Believe me on that one.
That's it. Let someone else do something, and let's see if the Canadiens could take advantage of a vulnerable spot. We'll see what happens there. All right, Marco, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be back on Saturday morning. Yeah, the rare Saturday morning live as we react with you to the Canadiens and Vegas Golden Knights matchup tomorrow afternoon. Big thanks to all of our sponsors. Big thanks to all of you guys for being here with us, spending some of your lunch hour, and enjoy the football if you get a chance to watch some of it today. And go Habs go, and we'll see you Saturday morning. Thanks, Marco.
Have a good day, everybody.